Welcome to the Columbus School Teacher Continuum. Today you will recall the what, why, and how of the teacher continuum. You'll consider how your classroom practices help to create a culture that supports your students in engaging and powerful learning, followed by a short self-assessment. The teacher continuum is research-based. It began with a rubric from Stanford University. Over the years, it's been developed with the input of many TCS stakeholder groups into a self-evaluation tool for teachers. At various points in the year, teachers will consider their process and reflect on their growth in one of the topics of the teacher continuum. This forms part of the process of teacher development and supervision at TCS. The continuum encourages continuous growth for individual teachers reflecting on their practices, as well as teams as departments working together to align in the way that they want students to learn. The teacher continuum is organized into 6 major topics with subtopics. At the top of each subtopic, you'll find an arrow. This arrow represents the idea that learning is a continual process and not a single score. That's what makes the continuum different than a scoring rubric. The arrows that you find in each topic and subtopic also represent a movement from left, teacher-controlled classroom, to right, an environment where students have more agency through a system of gradual release. You can find the entire teacher continuum in our TCS Teaching and Learning Handbook. Something important to remember about the teacher continuum is that the topics are not exclusive. All of them are integrated, but we like to start with classroom culture and systems as part of the foundation for all learning, moving up to standards which inspire the assessments that we create, the learning culture that we build, and how we integrate technology within our classes. As you work through the teacher continuum, you won't see topics or subtopics that are explicitly written for collaboration and horizontal or vertical alignment. However, those are expectations of working at TCS and help us to have greater collective teacher efficacy. Now let's jump into Topic 1, Classroom Culture. Take a moment to look at the overview for Topic 1, Classroom Culture. In a classroom with practices falling towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like community and relationship building activities embedded in each day, students working together for a purpose, calm, happy, focused faces, and students making decisions with some independence in line with community expectations. We're now in subtopic 1, between members of the community. Take a moment to read the categories, moving from left to right. In a classroom where more practices are towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like respectful communication between students and teacher, students choosing or proposing topics or activities to get to know peers better throughout the year, and teacher creating a regular time for relationship building. That could be within weekly conferences, morning meetings, warm-ups, entrance or exit tickets, and so on. We're now in subtopic 2, teacher role. Take a moment to read from left to right. In a classroom that has practices towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like the teacher being firm yet kind with all students, referencing expectations when necessary, and that the teacher is able to see potential growth in all of their students. We're now in subtopic 3, agreements. Take a moment to read from left to right. In a classroom that has practices towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like students co-creating classroom expectations with each other and the teacher, students proposing new agreements that may be needed in class as different situations arise, and students referencing classroom agreements in self and peer regulation. We're now in subtopic 4, problem resolution. Take a moment to read from left to right. In a classroom with practices towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like students naming when an action in class has caused a problem and generating ideas of how to solve it. Restorative practices being used by the students and the teacher, and a problem-solving process or steps displayed in the classroom. In a classroom with practices towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like students helping each other in appropriate ways and students working in ways that make sense for each of them as learners, not one size fits all. You're now in subtopic 6, social and emotional skills. Take a moment to read from left to right. In a classroom with practices towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like the teacher modeling skills needed as part of the weekly curriculum, such as how to make a decision in a group project, how to approach the teacher if you want to discuss an assignment, how to talk to a peer that's disrupting class, and so on. Or students evaluating themselves through reflection on social emotional learning skills. We've now reached subtopic 7, language learning expectations. This is the last subtopic of classroom culture. Please take a moment to read from left to right. In a classroom with practices towards the right side of the continuum, this might look like students speaking in more than one language in the same class or while working on the same assignment. Students reflecting on their process as a language learner, and the teacher using effective practices to scaffold for language learners. Thank you for watching the first video in the series of Teacher Continuum modules. This was Classroom Culture. Now you can take the survey in order to do a short self-reflection and goal setting before continuing on to Classroom Systems, which is Module 2. Thank you.